Good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chairman of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts, and when you are invited to speak, please ensure you turn your microphones on so that you can be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you're so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. So before we go through the agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. So to my right is Councillors Chandow, Batt and Smallwood. To my left is Ryan Dell, Democratic Services Officer. And then Councillors Sweeting, Judge, Gill and Mr Tony Little, our co-opted member. We also have officers with us this evening, Debbie Scarborough and Alex Coman. Good evening to you all and welcome. Okay, agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Ryan.
We have no apologies today.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Do we have any declarations? No? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. So with this, there were a couple of amendments that Councillor Sweeting sent via email. They have been looked into and they will be amended accordingly. I also had one thing just to note, which was a typo with Mr Little's name. So we need to make sure that that gets corrected too. Does anyone else have anything else on the minutes?
So just regarding the question about the early year centres, I think the question wasn't printed on the minutes itself. Yeah,
thank you. So that's one of the amendments that Councillor Sweeting has put forward and that will be added now. Thank you. All right, let's agree the minutes and move on. Agreed? Great. Agenda item 4 is to confirm that the items of business marked as part 1 will be considered in public and that the items marked as part 2 will be considered in private. So there are no part 2 items this evening. That takes us straight to agenda item 5, which is London Borough of Hillingdon's response to the National Safeguarding Review. So before I pass over to Alex for this, I just wanted to make it clear that this agenda item I've asked to come to the committee because I think it's actually quite good for the Scrutiny Committee to see this item. So, Alex, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. The report in front of you, it presents the Hillingdon's response to the National Safeguarding Review that happened up in Doncaster, looking at the safety and protection of the children with complex disabilities and health needs who are placed in residential special schools, which are also registered as children homes. So the report, the part 1 of the report has been published by the national panel in October of last year. And a month later, all the directors of children's services in the country have been written to and asked to do three separate activities. One of them was to review if we have any of our children from Hillingdon who are placed in similar circumstances, in similar type of provisions, and if we do, to conduct a review of the quality of the care and to make sure that the care they receive meets their needs. The action number 2 was if we have such a provision in our geographical area, so in Hillingdon, if we had any LAD or local authority designated officer investigation in those units, we were asked to review those investigations to make sure they were done correctly and there is nothing else to do about those. And action number 3 was to report these findings to the Safeguarding Children Partnership Board and also to the Corporate Parenting Panel. So the report is the Hillingdon response to those 3 requirements. Regarding the first requirement, we do have 3 children who are residents in such accommodations. So we did an independent review of all 3 of them. So independent reviewing officers have done independent visits. They've spoken to professionals. They've spoken to the children, spoken to the families, and they concluded there are no concerns about the care that our children are receiving, and the care they receive is appropriate and proportionate to the needs. Action number 2, we don't have any such provisions in Hillingdon, so therefore a review of the latter investigation was not required. And action number 3, this report and this response has been presented to the Corporate Parenting Panel in January of this year, and also presented to the Children's Safeguarding Board in January this year, and now it's in front of this committee for endorsement. So happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Alex. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Alex, thank you for this comprehensive report. I think it's a good news story and something that's been incredibly well delivered by officers. I just wondered if we could just delve into 2.1 in the table, where the Ofsted care is requiring improvement. What work are we doing to help that setting improve? But also, on a positive note, what lessons can we learn in the Ofsted rating Education Outstanding, so that the ones that are good can be outstanding next time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Regarding the required improvement ratings on that one home, we are aware of that before we did this visit, because every time a child moves into any residential unit, we will check the rating, we'll check the registrations, and we'll check the quality of that home, and we'll reassure ourselves that it's the proportionate service for that child and that they can meet the needs of the children. And obviously, like with any provider, we work with them and we ask them to kind of up their game, if you like, to get that to that better delivery. And I think in terms of learning from partners who are outstanding, that's a very good point, and I think we always strive to do that. And we always, when we receive, for instance, from the residential units, we receive Regulation 44 visits, which are done independently every month. We look at those, we read through them, and if there's any learning, of course, we're going to be, we're going to be embedding some of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, thank you very much, and it is very good that we in this committee receive this, and I thank the Chair for suggesting that. I'm a little confused about 2.2 on page 10, when it says that A's placement requires improvement, but the audit for A says both the education and the care are good. And it also, in 2.4, mentions A twice. A is noting as having good progress, but then it says that A is described as still settling in. So was that second A actually relating to C? And anyway, that confused me rather. Maybe you could explain.
Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, I do apologise for that. I think on 2.2, it wasn't A's placement. I think it was A placement. So it wasn't the child A. It was just the one placement. And I think somehow apostrophe S was in. So I do apologise. And yes, you're absolutely right. 2.4, the last A refers to child C.
Can I say, I know Chailey Heritage quite well, because I was at college very close to there, and I visited that school many times, and it was brilliant when I visited it, and I'm sure it's equally brilliant now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. I too also welcome a forward-thinking approach to this, especially coming up with an urgent plan for a very serious issue. My question's around the quality and safety reviews, how you carry out these reviews, and what specifically is included within them. Also want to know how much notice you give to these homes before you inspect them, because if you give sufficient notice, then sometimes you may not see all the serious issues occurring because they'll fix them before you come. And I'm just wondering if we do anything covertly to get a real picture of what's really happening in these homes.
Thank you very much. I think there is a larger response to this. It's probably not necessary for this report about how residential homes are inspected and how the national regulator Ofsted and also themselves through Regulation 44 visits ensure the quality of the provision. So that happens for every single residential home. So they will be visited by Ofsted, for instance, without notice. So they just pretty much just turn up. And the Regulation 44 visits are done every month, and they have to submit those Regulation 44 to everyone who has children placed in there. So in terms of that continuous scrutiny, that is there. In terms of what we've done as part of this review, we didn't give notice as such that we're going to be going to do this. We had a predefined form that we all agreed, and we looked at what areas we're going to be investigating, how we're going to do it, and the independent reviewing officer visited the home, went through our checklist, if you like, spoke to the staff, spoke to children, spoke to parents, and all that information was triangulated and was collated into one response.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chandal.
Thank you, Chair. Did we look at any children who have already been through the system? I understand there's an issue being raised in Doncaster by, quite rightly, bad people at work. Now, these 3 individuals are already in placement, but have we gone over and above and thought, actually, let's have a look at people who've gone through the system, maybe there's something to look into there? Thank you.
When the national review was initiated in Doncaster, and that's still going on. This is part 1 of review, so the part 2 and the final report is going to be published in November of this year. So the actual review is still going on. But when that was initiated, every single local authority in the country were contacted, and we looked through any children who might have been placed in those provisions in Doncaster. So we looked at all our historical placements and everything, and equally, for all the children who are placed who live with foster carers in residential units or whichever other provisions they are, they are visited by the social workers regularly, and we have independent reviewing officers who are allocated to them to review their care plans every 6 months at least. So we are continuously reassuring ourselves that children are receiving the right level of care.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Little.
Thank you. There's obviously a very small number of children involved here. Is that a deliberate policy that we try not to send people out of the area for that reason? And secondly, given that we do we minimise the distances so that they can be visited not just by our officers but by family or relatives as required?
Thank you very much. I mean, these children are not in Doncaster, but they are in provision. They are similar to the ones that were part of the review up in Doncaster. And regarding your point about where children are living and reducing the distance, we always try to place children as close as possible to Hillingdon, to the home, ideally within 20 miles of the home. And also, you're absolutely right. We also promote the contact with the family when it's safe to do so, and also professionals visiting. So yes, we're always considering that, and as part of the matching and as part of the what was provided to the children. Sometimes, due to the national situation or residential placements, we cannot find a local placement, so we have to go further afield. But that is always a consideration, and we never not consider that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Great. Okay, so thank you, Alex, for joining us this evening. You're welcome to stay or welcome to leave. Yeah, I thought so. Right, okay. Moving on then to agenda item 6, which is the Learn Hillingdon Adult Community Education Self-Assessment Report 2021 to 22. Debbie, pass over to you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks, Chair. So the report that I've submitted to you is our annual self-assessment report. Although it's not a legislative requirement, there is an assumption on the part of Ofsted and on the part of funding bodies, and really from the council, that we would write one of these every year and submit them, which we've done. It just summarises where we are in terms of the provision, who we're trying to reach, and it's supposed to give you a flavour of how well we're doing our jobs, really, to give you sort of an overview, and it's written against the Ofsted inspection framework. I'm happy to answer any questions, of course.
Okay, thank you. I think overall, just reading it, it's a very positive report. And it's great to read the feedback from the learners too. I think that really kind of brings it all together. I have a question, just to kick off the questions, is around the prioritising the areas for improvement or development, and how exactly are you focusing attention on those areas to ensure that we actually deliver on them?
I think we prioritise them in terms of the impact on learners. For instance, we started, the one that I put down most is capturing the evidence of learning in RAPA. RAPA, I've tried to stop with the abbreviations, but it's very difficult because you have a very long report otherwise, is the way in which we measure whether somebody has achieved their learning outcomes on a course that doesn't have a qualification attached to it. So obviously if you're going for an exam, you pass it, you fail it, it's straightforward. But if you're coming in for something, some kind of provision to help your mental health, or one of the standard sort of, I don't know, art classes or something that doesn't have that, it's more difficult. What we spotted in year through our quality monitoring was that there were some inconsistencies about how different tutors were managing that process. So essentially we sort of jumped on it, and because we then scrutinised, we lifted up the level of scrutiny and were much more critical of it, asking for clear evidence of everything. Our achievement rates for last year dropped, but that was a price that I decided was worth paying, because what I want is to make sure that the standards are always maintained. So that has a direct impact on learners, which means that that's something that is, to me, the top of the list in terms of improvements. Whereas looking at the new progression data and increasing enrolment numbers don't have quite such a direct impact on those people. So that's, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading the report is really positive, and looking at the enrolments from post-pandemic, they're obviously increasing, which is good to see. How is the data looking for the current financial year? Is it currently going down the same trajectory where we're improving and getting closer to the enrolments of pre-pandemic?
We're about on par, maybe slightly under this year. It's a problem that everybody's facing nationally. There are simply fewer enrolments in adult education currently. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. The current economic climate is one. It's not just about paying for courses, because more of them are fully funded now within the grant funding. It's also about having the time and the space to be able to come on the courses, and where before the pandemic people would go through, say, a level 2 course and then progress to a level 3, because that would mean they were going into their career with greater qualifications, better chance for promotion. Now they're leaving at level 2 and moving straight into work because they need the income. So you've also got still some throwback from COVID sort of concerns about mixing. So there's all sorts of things in there. So we're not sort of significantly down. I'd be happier if we were a little closer to it, but I'd always be happier if we were a little closer to it. So, we're only halfway through the year, so I'm probably just being a bit overcautious.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points, and I think what reset my mind in this report is that learning is for life, and it's not just something that you necessarily do up to the age of 18 and maybe go on and do for a little longer. It's for life, and it is never too late to learn. I was really struck by the breakdown of male-female. Do we think there's a lot of women who are coming along and accessing this who may, earlier in life, may not have had the access to education that many of us around the table would have had, and the importance of that? And then the other one I talk about, a little bit more information about the external opportunities and the signposting, where somebody may need signposting for support with things like universal credit or mental health services. What are we doing to support them with those general things? But also about going on into the next step after that learning, whether that be going and getting a qualification in their GCSEs or A-levels or university, or just going in and doing external volunteering or work. I read about the amount of asylum seekers that we're supporting, many of which just want to get on and do stuff. And of course, this country's been generous in letting many Ukrainians in as they flee war, and the importance of supporting them. So those sort of like external opportunities and the next step that they go on. Thank you very much.
I think we're very good in terms of supporting progression into people's next steps, but also in terms of supporting them through their learning while they're doing it, because we focus, there are different groups that we could focus on, but we look at the data, and we felt for several years now that our key role is to encourage people into learning who think it isn't for them. The people with the lower skills levels, the people that, as you say, didn't leave education with enough to help them really move on in their work and their lives. There is a real need for that, and they are sometimes the group that providers can overlook because it's not quite as glamorous. You know, it's nicer to be able to say we've got lots of people in with GCSEs and they're all going off into, having done an access to a HE course, they're off into uni. That's really nice and looks good, but actually we're focusing on the people that aren't anywhere near that. Within that, there are a lot of women in that position. There are a lot of men, but there are more women. So our classes are timetabled around a school day. We still, of course, do evening classes so that lots of other people can come as well, but that encourages and enables women with families and children at school to be able to come and start those first steps. So I think we're quite good at doing that. But because we work with that group, there are a lot of needs that need supporting. So I think we are very effective at identifying where people need support and putting that support in so that they can complete and then progress. So that might be saying to somebody, look, let me give you some information about benefits, or put you in touch with JCP or whoever. We do signpost a lot. We actually had our matrix inspection, which is an information, advice and guidance quality mark this year as well, which we passed with flying colours. I was really pleased about. The problem that we have with progression is capturing it, because once people move on, it's hard always to find out what they've moved on to. So they might be with us for 4 or 5 years if they've started at the lower levels, and then they go off, they go into that job, or they go into, and we don't always know what happens after that. So that's the progression report that we're trying to pull together to try to get a bit of a better sort of database for what we do. But I think that all the staff have been trained to provide high quality information, advice and guidance. We review that regularly, and we've been working on curriculum planning for next year today, and that's one of the things we're going to be reviewing again this week to say how else can we improve it. Does that answer your question?
Okay, Councillor Sweeting.
Well, I'd like to thank Debbie for the report, and I'd like to thank her team for all of the work that they've been doing to make a service that was good as far as Ofsted was concerned, and it's still good. I was part of the major review of your service which took place, and I know that I'm not certain whether it was a recommendation, but it was certainly noted that Hillingdon was not receiving possibly its equal share of GLA funding, and that there would be a possibility of inquiring why and how this could be bettered. Has any progress been made over that?
Yes and no. In the conversation that we had at the time, the answer is no, really. There aren't many formal channels through which you can apply for that additional funding, and it's a historic figure that was created some 20 years ago, and so unless they decide to look at every provider again and change it, there's not a lot that we can do about that. But on the other hand, we're very fortunate that we're in London, because actually the GLA have been very good at finding funding pots that we can try to access. So, for instance, we've got some additional funding in which we received this financial year for the next 3 years. It's a project called Multiply, which is around non-accredited, so informal learning to help people just improve any kind of maths or numeracy and get rid of the fear factor and think, actually, you know, perhaps this will help me budget better, very practical ways. And so we've achieved that because we were one of the top, I think it was 50, I'm not sure, providers in London. So we got that funding, which we were really pleased with. The other thing is that when they can, they do allow us to apply for more baseline funding, and there's an application that I submitted a few weeks ago that's going through now. We'll know at the end of March whether we've been successful. So I've asked for more funding, but I don't know. We just have to hope.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chandal, I'll come round.
Thank you, Chairman. It's about the data that you presented. First one is, why do we have 4 years? And the second question is, on page 21, we've got enrolments and achievements on 4 years, but retention and pass really showing 3 years data. If you could just explain that, that'd be great.
Ooh, there's a lot to unpick there. The 4 years is trying to capture the picture from as we went into COVID. It was something we started last year because that was the pre-COVID year. And when you're looking at figures such as the enrolment numbers, we were up to about 5,000 enrolments each year, and it showed the decline through COVID, and now we're showing the gradual improvement again. So it's for me to be able to assess how well we are recovering, and also for my team. That's why I've asked them to do those over 4 years, so that we can really know our data well. I'm sorry, I've focused on that one and I've missed the other part of your question. Would you mind just repeating it for me?
Yeah, on page 21, we've got the 4 years for enrolments and achievement, but only 3 years for retention and pass rate.
Sorry, bear with me. Yes, you're absolutely right. This is probably not a good answer. Honestly, it was a question of prioritising the data we could fit on. And the two key areas that we have been concerned about, primarily because they've had the greatest differences, were enrolment and achievement rates, whereas the retention rate has improved and been stable. The pass rate has improved and been stable. So when we couldn't fit it on, we took those two columns out. It's a really pragmatic answer, and I apologise. It's probably not good enough, but that's the truth. I'm happy to send you the data, though, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Little.
Thank you, and thank you for such a positive report. And I particularly welcome the clarity of purpose that's shown. I think wasn't as clear when we did the review that time round. Like Councillor Smallwood, I was struck by the gender imbalance, and I was wondering, are there among men, are there harder to reach groups, and do we have much data about the demographics of the people who are using the service and benefiting from the service? Because it struck me that there probably are some new arrivals in the country are going to be harder to reach almost by definition, but people who have bad experiences at school are probably harder to reach, and you switch to electronic marketing, if I may put it that way, which presumably leaves out another section of the community, particularly in the poorer end of the community, who aren't seeing that you've got all this stuff available. So I wonder if you had any comments.
So in terms of men, in my experience, it's always been harder to recruit men into adult learning. I think there are all sorts of issues with that. I think one is that there's a certain vulnerability that it seems to be, I mean, I've only ever been a woman, so I can't really talk, but it seems to be harder for men to say, actually, I need help with this, than for women to say it. It's somehow socially more acceptable for women to. I don't understand it, but that seems to be the case over many years' experience. We've done all kinds of things. The best sort of example of something that we did manage to recruit some men onto was we worked, this was a long time ago, we worked at a football ground doing dads, lads and football stats to try to get some numeracy going. But even then, we maybe got 7, 8 men involved. I think they're more likely to be out working which is a very sort of non-PC thing to say, but it's the truth. We tend to work with people that are, a lot of our ladies, our women that come through are wives. Many of them are studying ESOL, English for speakers of other languages. So you've got various cultural issues that go along with that. We are always asking our peers across West London what's worked for them. I think as well, probably our offer doesn't necessarily lend itself so much to things that men might want. When we do recruitment, it tends to be around mental health issues and vocational issues. So if we've got people, it's mental health, and that sort of whole health area just cuts across every socioeconomic divide, everything. You get everybody in there. It's a really complex one. I mean, over in Hammersmith and Fulham, they do things like bicycle repairs and things, which we've spoken to some of our colleagues in one of the departments in the council about perhaps trying to organise, but it's something that they do anyway. There really does seem to be this very traditional approach to it. So we'd love to try to get more men involved, but we do struggle with it, quite honestly. I don't know, we're always trying to look at different things to get them involved, but it is a very difficult nut to crack. In terms of marketing, there were all sorts of reasons behind the change. Primarily trying to support the sustainability agenda of the council, moving things into the 21st century, capturing the advances that had been made through COVID, where there was so much more online and people were so much more able to access things online. We didn't want to take a backward step there, and also, frankly, cost. Producing a brochure each time, that our provision moves and changes all the time. So it's great when you're going to print, but very quickly, especially as you get towards the end of that first term, many of those courses are out of date or finished. So we looked at providing some that would be termly, but the resources that would need to go into that was so great. And with this push for sustainability, it seems counterintuitive to then produce brochures. That said, it's been the people that there have been, most people have just got on with it and been fine. Because it's not the only way we connect with people. There's a lot of our staff who are very, very good at explaining what we do and helping people through those steps to enrol. The people that have been the most unhappy about it have tended to be people who are doing personal development courses. So the people that are doing IELTS on a Thursday, or they've finished work, they want to come and just relax, meet people, make friends. It reduces social isolation. There's a lot of really good things about that provision, but we do get a lot of repeats, a lot of returning learners. We also get new learners, but there's a high proportion of those, and they're used to skimming through the brochure, checking out the dates, checking out. So there's been a bit of an adaptation going on, and some of them haven't been very happy about that. But as I say, we're actually looking at how we look at our IAG, our information, advice and guidance, and our marketing is what we're doing. We're working on it today. I wouldn't rule out the idea of producing another brochure type marketing exercise, but we won't be sending it to print. So what we're thinking is maybe we'll create something that looks like the brochure that they're more familiar with, and then they can print off the 3 pages or whatever that they need to print off if they want to print it. So we're trying to find a middle ground, but we're also using social media. We're using all kinds of things. So it's hard to quantify. We've had lots of things over the past year. We've got the recovery from the pandemic. We've also got the move from Brookfield to the Civic Centre. We've also got the change in marketing. It's hard to pinpoint which of these is having an effect on everybody, and so it's kind of a difficult question to answer. So I hope I've given you an idea.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on quite nicely from what you were just discussing about the lack of representation from males and also your current strategy for marketing. I'm just interested to see, forgive me if you've done this already, but to see if there's any data where you've broken down in terms of age and also cultural backgrounds, because I think that could be quite useful to really understand why there's a lack of representation. In my very short life experience I have, I found that sort of young adults tend to be more engaged with these kind of courses, whereas sort of those adults in their 30s or 40s are kind of a bit more reluctant. And I think certain cultural differences, like you said, language and various things could be a challenge for some people, and that could perhaps help you with your marketing strategy.
Yes, we do. We do, absolutely. We cut the data in so many different ways. We've got data about different ethnic groups, about different ability levels, male, female, all kinds of things. And we absolutely scour that and rely on it. Again, it's something I'm very happy to forward if you'd like me to. There's something about Councillor Smallwood's comment early on about lifelong learning. It in my experience over too many years probably, it's like you get bitten by a bug. If we can attract them and they start to see, oh, I did that, then they get the bug for it and they think, well, if I managed to do this, maybe I could do that. And that's how we help people progress through those very first tentative steps. And then they get it. They understand how important it is to learn. They can see the impact on their families as oftentimes their children watch mum or dad or whoever do their homework while they're sitting next to them. You know, we have homework clubs and so on. And so then it actually spreads with adults. They tend to go by word of mouth. They'll tend to take a chance if their neighbour or their friend or their family member has done it. So the importance of working with community groups can't be understated, because if you've got a peer saying, actually, this is welcoming, this is okay, that's what seems to make the difference. And I think, you know, honestly, I think, you know, we have to be very careful that we choose the right vocational areas to specialise in, so that as these guys come through their English, maths, ESOL needs, digital skills, they get those basic needs and they go, actually, I've always really wanted to work in mental health. I'm really interested in it. Right, we've got these qualifications. Or in, I don't know, engineering. Well, that's not something we do, but you might find that at Uxbridge or at West London. Or I think that we have focused on the areas where the demand is coming from learners who fundamentally are women that are coming through. So they're saying, these are the sorts of things we want to do. And looking in comparison, not in comparison, but as well as that, obviously, primarily at the local need. So if we know there are certain areas where there are jobs, that's what we're going to be developing, and that's exactly what we're working on at the moment for next year. So there's quite a complex sort of background of information that goes into trying to plan it all, and a large part of that is what's going on with our current learners, what is the breakdown, who are they, who are we reaching, are we reaching the target groups we're trying to, and then have we got any groups that are not achieving as well. So for instance, last year we found that there were achievement gaps for people that had mental health issues, and the problem there was trying to retain them. It was attendance and it was retention. And we found that we had attendance gaps for people that had disclosed dyslexia, which is something that personally drives me up the wall, because that's one of my areas. And so we're putting in some more training at the moment so that people are better prepared to cope with supporting people with dyslexia, because really that shouldn't be the case nowadays. But also, actually what was really good was we didn't see any significant achievement gaps based on age. In fact, age was very close, gender was very close, ethnicity no significant achievement gaps, which was really good. But, you know, as fast as you close one gap, another one opens. It's one of those things that will never quite crack, I think. You know, you think, right, that's it, we've got it, and then something else shows up. You think, oh. So, yeah, I've gone on again. I'm sorry. I hope I've answered your question. You'll be frightened to ask me.
Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wondered if I could do 2 points, just hone in a little bit on probably mainly women. I'm going to hazard a guess just from knowing a little bit about it, the amount of women we have that have had no education at all, and how we try and how we work with them, especially maybe breaking down some of the traditional cultural backgrounds that they may come from, where there may still be issues with them going into learning, and how we break some of that down, because we've seen some really inspiring work done across the world. But then also testimonial stories, and being able to tell the white working class man who's from a low socioeconomic background, who didn't go to school and can't read and write, that there is somebody else like him out there that can now read and write. Or the woman who arrived here unable to speak in the UK, unable to speak English, is now going to university and becoming a doctor. Those are inspirational stories, and how we show somebody the journey that someone else has been on, that is from their background. It's all right, me as a councillor saying it, who did well at school and went to university and had a fairly middle class lifestyle. But they don't want to hear it from me. They need to hear it from people that they can possibly relate a little bit more to. So how we do that, those 2 points. Thank you, Debbie.
So in terms of reaching everybody, I mean, we target everyone, but in terms of our sort of groups, but we get out into the community. We go out, we work with various community groups, because you've got to start from a position of safety, really. They need to feel safe with their peers and safe to kind of venture and look. It really is terrifying beyond words to take those first steps into education as an adult, because you're convinced that everybody else will know more than you, which of course isn't the case. And you think you're going to stand out, and all of those concerns. So we do a lot of partnership-based work. We've got a dedicated member of the team who, the main thing she does is goes out and does targeted outreach with groups. But we also, we try to work with lots of different groups. So we do some work with the Hillingdon Women's Centre, for instance, and we work with Hillingdon Mind and Age UK and the Carers Association. It's not called that anymore, but and we've done some really good work with carers, actually, who can be male or female. We've got a group that we offered some Spanish online to in COVID, and they're still doing it. They're all going to be proficient before we know it. They're still in there, but the improvement in their well-being, because it's online, they don't have to worry about getting respite care. They are still in the house, and it means that they've made really great friends, and they feel like they've just had a couple of hours for themselves. So, sometimes it's not sort of earth-shattering and changing lives. It's just making them so much better. It's helping them be able to cope with their caring responsibilities. So that's kind of how we do it. Once they've got the bug, then they're off. And then it becomes much easier. It's just helping them get through each level. It's trying to reach people. And again, it's just very difficult at this point because they've got so many other pressures. In terms of testimonials and case studies, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no point me going and saying this is really good, because they're going to go, well, what else would you say? So we've got case studies that we've been building up over years of learners themselves saying, I felt like that, I did this is what I did. We've got them all written up, we've got them on the website, we've put a video together, which is lovely. We did it a couple of years ago, that's got a whole load of short, very, very informal, sort of on their phone, this is me, this is my story, all kinds of people all matching up. So, and that's on the website, so anybody can see it. We also were really pleased that one of our learners, we put a learner forward for a national award, and she won last year, which was fantastic. And she's got quite a complex case history. She's dyslexic. She's had mental health issues for most of her life, and since she's been with us, she came to us saying, I really want to come and learn here, but I'm going through my surgery for a transgender surgery, and so I need to use the ladies' loos and all that. So we talked that through, said of course you can, this is what we'll do to put safeguards in place, and she's been with us ever since, and now she's got through loads of qualifications. She's doing really well. She's working part-time and volunteering for a mental health charity in London, still studying health and social care. She's doing great. So, you know, we've in terms of marketing, I went and did a podcast rather with Uxbridge Radio a couple of months back, just before Christmas, which went out to try to encourage people to join, and cited some of those cases. So they're in the brochure, they're online, and they're displayed in the centres.
Great, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
I mean, your enthusiasm for the service, I mean, is it shows your dedication. But anyway, that's not my question or comment. There have been some movements. You've moved out of 2 venues into the Civic Centre. Has there been positives? Have there been negatives around that? And if so, explain, please.
Yes, both. I mean, we've actually moved out of one at the moment. There's another one to come. So we've moved out of Brookfield into the Civic Centre. The negatives are Brookfield. Really, the biggest one was that Brookfield was such a brand name for us, which personally was actually tricky because we were constantly trying to say adult community learning and so on. But that was tricky because people would assume, those people that I spoke about earlier who are returning learners, who know what they do and know how they do it, and made the assumption that nothing would change because of various sort of delays in the process. We weren't able to tell people before they finished in July. So it all happened after the classes finished, even though we'd expected it for some time. So that's the biggest disadvantage. And then I don't know sort of to what extent that hampered those original enrolments, but I think word's out there now, and we've had, on the positive side, we've got fantastic resources downstairs. We've now got a great cookery room. The comms team, the corporate comms team, have been amazing in helping us really push what we do, and we've been in Hillingdon People and all kinds of things, lots of online support. And we are, you know, the accommodation's great, that's no problem. So I think we're overcoming it. It's all becoming more normal, and we've got a careers fair planned for there, so again more people will come in. We've just got to try to spread the word about us. But honestly, we always had that problem before we moved as well. It's like people call it the secret service almost, because nobody's heard of us. You know, we've been there plodding away for years, and somehow people still don't know we're there. In terms of the other move, that's happening in Hillingdon with the Pinkwell Lane School. The good thing is that we'll have nice, new, warm buildings, you know, so a building, that will be nice, and it's on the same site, so it will be less disruptive. The disadvantage is that we will have a smaller amount of, a smaller number of classrooms. So although each of them will be bigger, which will enable us to run bigger classes, which is more cost efficient, there'll be 5 instead of 7. So that's a drawback, because we do so much ESOL and English and maths, and most of that runs out of the south. So as I said, we were working on the planning today, so we're just looking at how we can kind of overcome that one. But yeah, so that is probably the answer to your question.
But you moved out of Ruislip as well, didn't you? How did that affect you?
Yes, I beg your pardon. I don't think of it like that because we've still got a couple of classes there, so I forget we moved out. Yes, we did. We moved out of the Ruislip Manor classrooms downstairs, and we've got just a couple of classrooms now still running upstairs that the library help us to manage in terms of, you know, seeing people in and so on. That didn't have a massive impact because several years ago, there'd been issues with the buildings, with our classrooms downstairs, with the lifts not working for a while. It meant that we tended to see an older population there. Not entirely, but we tended to have that group. And because there was a problem with the lift for some time, we've moved quite a lot of our classes out into South Ruislip and other venues. So when the lift was working and the classes reopened, actually the demand wasn't there in the same way. So that had much less of an impact on residents and the service.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Judge.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Debbie, for your comprehensive report. Can you provide evidence of effective partnership working, which is one of the strengths of the service? Thank you.
Well, I mentioned about the carers. That's a good one. I think that we work well with other members of the council, so we provide and have provided all the childminder training in the borough for many years through the early years team funding. That's allowed lots of people to set up businesses, and during COVID we were able to really support those childminders who were feeling quite lost and isolated, couldn't keep their businesses going. We had a lot of professional development and things going on because we were working with the early years team. We've got areas such as our mental health provision. We've got two parts to that. One is the qualifications to go and become a mental health professional. The other side of it is helping people who have got disclosed mental health issues, and we've worked with Mind for a long time with that provision. That's quite strong. As I said, we tend to get men through that as well as women. That's one of our areas that I'm quite proud of, because it's not very glamorous, but it makes a big difference. And last year the asylum seeker work was through working with the hotels in the Heathrow area and going in, and we ran initial assessment sessions for sort of 50 people, 80 people at a time, and then we ran some classes on the premises to save them having to travel to ours, and other classes in our centres. So there are a few of them.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Great, thank you very much, Debbie, for joining us this evening and for answering all of our questions. You've given us a really good insight into adult learning, so thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so feel free to leave if you like. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 7 is the updated scoping report for the review of the Stronger Families Hub. Ryan, can I pass over to you? Thank you.
Yep, so this report essentially outlines updates to the witness programme, specifically with the attendees that we have. So it lists the number of confirmed attendees that we have for the witness session on Monday, and also some confirmed and some still to be confirmed for the witness session on the 14th of March.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions or comments on this? Mr. Little?
Do you want me to come along?
Yeah, I feel free to, That's fine, And for those members who aren't able to come, actually, that's a good point. Perhaps if you wanted to submit some questions that you might want to be asked to Ryan, because obviously this is during the day, so I understand and appreciate that some of you will be at work, so might not be able to attend. Yeah. Councillor Sweeting?
You may remember that we did ask whether the 14th of March meeting would include representatives from schools. I can't see that anybody there is there from schools.
We're still to be confirmed, so we're still working on it.
I would very much hope that we will get that, because the schools are a part of the pattern that, the jigsaw puzzle really. Without them, we're without a few pieces, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Sweeting, and I have asked Democratic Services to look into that, and they have asked the officers. So that is going on behind the scenes, so hopefully we can get that confirmed. Okay. Oh, yeah, Councillor Judge?
Yeah. I mean, can we have some witness sessions in the evening as well.
Yeah,
so there's a balance, you know.
Yeah, so the reason why these particular sessions have been taking place during the day is because of some of the information that they're sharing is sensitive. Obviously, when we're meeting the young people or the parents, we can't have it as a recorded meeting because to protect their confidentiality and to safeguard them. So the one that's happening on the 14th of March, I believe that is a session that's happening and taking place during our actual meeting. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, so let's move on to agenda item 8, which is the Select Committee member visit to the Uxbridge Family Hub. Now, this was just a verbal update, which, if you remember back in July of last year, which feels a very long time ago, Councillor O'Brien kindly invited members of this committee to visit the Family Hub. So I thought that this would be really good for us to go and visit. So dates and times will be organised, and I think that Ryan will share that information in due course. So just a bit of a heads up there. Okay, and then
again, could I just ask to be included?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Agenda item 9 is the forward plan. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Councillor Sweeting.
I see that the Cabinet meeting of the 20th April would have the Standards and Quality of Education report. Now, this is such an important report because with COVID, we've not had the key stage, well, not examinations, but tests. And so the last report that we had last year really was quoting information from the previous years. This is going to be absolutely vital. But I see on our work programme that this is not coming to us now in March. It says quality performance monitoring pushed back from March, date to be confirmed. So I do think that it's very important that we have sight of this in this committee before it goes to Cabinet, because we have asked in the past in another place, in another committee, that the importance of comparing Hillingdon not only to London boroughs but our 10 statistical neighbours, and that should be quite a sort of a simple comparison, because what we found in previous reports that this was sort of scattered throughout the report, and so it's a report that will be providing some actual data from last year, but also it needs to be as clear as possible about how we're performing. And we did ask, and this was reported to Cabinet, and I cannot remember what Cabinet report it went to, that we were liaising with other London boroughs about how they are doing things, because we're finding that some, inner London boroughs that have high degrees of deprivation are managing to improve performance in their schools, and wherever we can learn would be a really good way forward. And I know Cabinet agreed with that, and that was a suggestion to go forward on that. So clarity on when we're actually going to have that report, please. Okay, and then agenda item 10 is the work programme. So the only thing I guess to mention on this one is that the Ukrainian children update, that's been deferred to our meeting next month, and that's just primarily to allow for a more comprehensive report to come to committee. Yes, Councillor Sweeting. We did submit questions in the part 2, and we haven't had answers to those, so maybe we could find out when that will be forthcoming. Also, when we had the youth offer report, I did mention, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Can we have an assessment of how the youth offer is going after, say, a period of time? Could that be put on our work programme? I know it will be the work programme for next year now, but maybe after a year with the youth offer going out for consultation and then in practice, working in practice. I think that needs to be put on the work programme. And there's another issue which is of concern. There are quite a few of our schools that are taking asylum-seeking children on roll, and some of those schools have got children on roll but actually missing from school. Now, obviously there's liaison between the school, the council and maybe the Home Office on those youngsters, but I think we do need to know what processes the council is going through to ensure that those children on roll at school but not in school, where they are, because there have been reports in other places of the concerns that some children missing from school.
Have you heard of that specifically here in Hillingdon? No,
I have got one school in particular that's got a number of children, right, and I don't mean 4 or 5, a number of children that are on roll but not at school.
Okay, so maybe we can ask for...
After the meeting, I can share that information with you, Chair.
All right, great. Yeah. Okay, all right, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. So thank you all very much for joining this evening. I think we had a really good discussion, especially about the adult learning. Thank you for your contribution and your questions, and yeah, thank you.